The stars were silent before the storm. Commander Alara Hayes stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Solstice, watching the endless black sky. Around her, thousands of human ships floated in formation, their hulls shining under distant suns. Beyond them, the massive Draxan fortress waited, a dark world-sized structure surrounded by fleets of warships. It looked like a living shadow, swallowing all light around it. This was the heart of the enemy, the place where countless Valari had been tortured and killed. This was where the war would be decided. Hayes felt the weight of every life on her shoulders. Humanity had come a long way for this moment. Now there was no turning back. The crew moved silently, their faces tense but determined. Every person knew what was at stake. Some whispered small prayers. Others just stared at the holographic maps, their hearts pounding. Hayes walked slowly through the bridge, her eyes sharp but calm. "Is the fleet ready?" she asked. Her second-in-command, Captain Rohan Malik, nodded. "Every ship is in position, Commander. The Draxans won't know what hit them." Hayes didn't smile. "They'll know," she said quietly. "They'll know exactly who came for them." The operation began with total silence. The human fleet drifted closer, their engines muted. The plan was to strike fast and strike hard before the Draxans could organize. As they neared the enemy's outer defenses, the darkness of space lit up with flashes of red and blue. The first wave of human fighters darted forward like arrows of light, releasing storms of plasma fire. The Draxan defense platforms exploded one after another, filling the void with fire. Hayes gave the order, "All fleets advance." No mercy, the Draxans fought back fiercely. Their warships were monstrous, covered in sharp black armor that looked almost alive. Their weapons spat beams of crimson light that tore through space. Human ships were hit. Explosions flared across the battlefield. Screams echoed through communication channels. But the humans didn't stop. They kept moving forward, wave after wave, their anger pushing them beyond fear. Each time a ship fell, 10 more took its place. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for every innocent life the Draxans had destroyed. Commander Hayes' voice cut through the chaos. "Focus fire on their central fleet. Do not let them regroup." Her commands came sharp and clear, her tone never shaking. On her screen, she saw the Draxan flagship, a massive beast of metal and shadow moving toward her. The ship was 5 times larger than hers. "That's the one," she said. "Take it down." The battle raged like a storm of fire. Human ships weaved between enemy cruisers, striking with deadly precision. The Draxans had superior technology, but they had never fought an enemy like humanity before. An enemy that refused to break, even when outmatched. In one corner of the battlefield, a squad of young human pilots sacrificed themselves to protect a Valari refugee ship. Their ship exploded in a burst of light, taking down 3 Draxan destroyers with them. When Hayes saw the explosion on her screen, her eyes filled with tears. "Your courage will not be forgotten," she whispered. As the hours passed, the Draxan fleet began to crumble. The human alliance, fueled by rage and unity, was unstoppable. The Valari ships fought beside them, glowing like silver comets, channeling the energy of their Lunaris essence into their weapons. The combined power of both species painted the sky with fire. For the first time in their history, the Draxans began to retreat. They had never known fear, until that day. Then came the moment that changed everything. A transmission appeared on Hayes' screen. It was from inside the Draxan fortress. A voice spoke, weak, trembling, but unmistakably Valari. "This is Saren of Valari Prime," it said. "They are draining us. Thousands of us. Please destroy the core." Hayes froze. The Draxans were still extracting the life energy of the captives even as the battle raged. Her heart turned cold. She gave the order instantly. "Target the fortress core. Full power, now." Every human ship adjusted its aim. Massive cannons charged with glowing energy. The fortress responded, unleashing waves of red fire that tore through the fleet. Several human ships exploded instantly. "Keep firing!" Hayes shouted. "Don't stop!" The bridge shook violently as the Solstice was hit. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, but no one left their post. The screens flickered, showing the fortress cracking under the assault. Then, through the smoke and chaos, something strange happened. A faint golden light began to rise from the fortress, spreading through space. It was the energy of the dying Valari escaping at last. Hayes watched it with tears in her eyes. "They're free," she whispered, but the Draxans refused to surrender. Their leader, High Lord Varric, appeared on the communication screen. His voice was deep and cruel. "You think you can defeat us, human?" he snarled. "You are insects crawling in the dark. The Dominion is eternal." Hayes looked at him, calm and fearless. "Then this is where eternity ends," she said, and cut the channel. The Draxon flagship launched its final attack, firing a massive energy beam directly at the solstice. The ship shook violently, metal bending, fires breaking out. "Shields at 30%, shouted Malik. "We can't take another hit." Hayes gritted her teeth. "Then we don't take it. Aim at their main cannon, everything we've got." The ship's main guns roared to life, sending a blazing beam of blue energy straight into the Draxon flagship. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The two forces collided in pure light, and then the Draxon ship exploded in a blinding flash that lit up the entire battlefield. The explosion tore through the fortress, breaking it apart, piece by piece. The fire spread like a chain reaction, devouring everything. Draxon ships tried to flee, but the human fleet chased them down relentlessly. Every blast, every explosion was an answer to centuries of suffering. It was vengeance, but it was also justice. When the dust finally settled, nothing of the Draxon stronghold remained. Only burning wreckage drifted among the stars. The battlefield was silent. The enemy was gone, but the cost was heavy. Hundreds of human ships were lost, thousands of soldiers dead. Hayes walked through the damaged bridge, her uniform torn, her face covered in ash. Around her, crew members cheered weakly, crying and hugging each other. "We did it," Malik said softly. Hayes nodded, but her eyes were distant. "Yes," she said, "but look at what it took." Outside the ship, the sky glowed faintly gold. The freed energy of the Volari drifted like stars surrounding the human fleet in silence. It was as if the spirits of the lost were thanking them. Hayes stepped closer to the window, touching the glass. "You can rest now," she whispered. "No one will ever hurt you again." Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. The Draxon Dominion was defeated. The humans had done what no one else dared to do. They had brought down the most feared empire in the stars. On Earth, people filled the streets, celebrating not victory in war, but the triumph of courage. In the Volari ruins, survivors wept as they watched the stars, whispering the names of the fallen. "The humans came," they said, "and they avenged us." But even in victory, Hayes felt no joy. She stood alone in her cabin that night, staring at the reflection of the stars on the window. She thought of all the lives lost, human and Volari alike. She thought of the young pilots who had never returned, the civilians who had prayed for peace and received fire instead. The Draxons were gone, but at what cost? "We brought vengeance," she murmured. "But did we lose a part of ourselves doing it?" Her thoughts were interrupted by Lyrian's soft voice. The Volari girl had survived the battle and now stood beside her. "They are free because of you," Lyrian said quietly. "You gave us back our light." Hayes looked at her and shook her head. "No," she said softly. "We just showed the galaxy that even light can burn when pushed too far." Outside, the golden glow began to fade as the last of the Volari souls drifted into the stars. The humans began their long journey home, carrying the memory of what they had done. The galaxy was quiet again, but that silence was not peaceful. It was heavy, full of memories, full of ghosts. Humanity had won the war, but something deep within them had changed forever. They had learned that vengeance could bring justice, but it could also leave scars that never fade. As the solstice flew through the dark sky, Commander Hayes closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "They begged for help and we brought them vengeance. Maybe that's what saving the galaxy really means." The stars outside flickered gently as if listening, and for a brief moment, it seemed that the universe itself understood her pain. In the year 2149, the world was no longer the same as before. Humans had gone far beyond their home planet, building great cities on the Moon, Mars, and even the icy moons of Jupiter. Space was no longer just darkness. It had become a second home. The stars that once seemed unreachable were now being explored by brave men and women. They believed they were alone, the only intelligent life in the universe. For generations, humanity had searched the skies, sending messages, building telescopes, and dreaming of contact. But year after year, silence answered them. Many began to think that life existed only on Earth. They were wrong. It started quietly, almost unnoticed. In one of the deep space monitoring stations near Saturn, a technician named Ryan noticed a strange signal. It wasn't random noise or a natural frequency. It had a pattern, a rhythm, and most shockingly, it sounded like a cry. At first, he thought it was a system glitch. But as the hours passed, the message repeated again and again. The team of scientists decoded the strange sound, and when they finally understood it, they were stunned. It was a plea for help. A voice, not human but intelligent, was begging for salvation. The message came from a star system called Viralia, nearly 800 light-years away. Within hours, every major government on Earth was alerted. The United Earth Council, which ruled most of the human colonies, held an emergency meeting. World leaders, scientists, and military commanders gathered to discuss what this could mean. Some believed it was a trap. Others thought it was the greatest discovery in human history. The message was clear but heartbreaking. It said, "We are dying. We are the Villari. Our worlds burn. Please help us." Those words changed everything. The news spread across the entire solar system like wildfire. Media channels played the alien voice repeatedly. People cried, prayed, and argued. Many were filled with hope, thinking humanity was finally not alone. But others were afraid. They remembered how humans had fought wars on Earth, how greed and fear had destroyed millions of lives. What if these aliens were dangerous? What if this was a trick? Among the chaos, one person listened to the signal with deep sadness and curiosity. Commander Alara Hayes, a decorated officer of the Interstellar Defense Fleet, had spent her life protecting the fragile peace between Earth's colonies. She had seen enough war to understand pain. When she heard the Villari's cry, she couldn't ignore it. She felt something deep inside her heart, something that told her this wasn't just another signal. These were living beings suffering, pleading for help across the endless darkness. Days turned into weeks as scientists worked to gather more information. The Villari signal carried images and data, broken glimpses of their destroyed cities, their wounded skies, and strange creatures fleeing from fire. They looked beautiful, with shimmering golden skin and glowing eyes, but their faces were filled with fear. From what could be understood, another species, called the Draxan Dominion, had attacked them. The Draxans were powerful, merciless, and spreading destruction across their star systems. The Villari were losing everything. On Earth, the debate grew stronger. Some politicians demanded that humanity should stay away. They argued that the Villari's war was not their concern. Others believed it was humanity's moral duty to help. "If we can save even one world," Commander Hayes said in a broadcast, "then we prove that humanity has learned from its past." Her words touched millions. People remembered the times when help never came, when nations on Earth turned away from others in need. This time, humanity had the power to make a different choice. Finally, after long discussions, the United Earth Council agreed to send a small exploration fleet to investigate the signal. The mission was named Project Dawnlight. Commander Hayes was chosen to lead it. Her crew included scientists, engineers, and soldiers from different parts of the world. They weren't going to fight. They were going to observe to see if the Villari were real, and if their plea was true. Before leaving, Hayes stood on the launch platform looking at Earth one last time. The blue planet glowed beneath her feet, peaceful yet fragile. She whispered, "If they need us, we will not fail them." The engines of the great ship Solstice roared to life, and the journey began. The journey through space was long and silent. As the Solstice traveled at faster than light speed, the crew talked about what awaited them. Some dreamed of meeting new friends, others feared they might never return. In the quiet of the ship, Hayes often looked out into the stars, thinking about the message. She wondered what kind of world the Villari had, what kind of people they were, and if they were still alive. After weeks of travel, they finally reached the outer edge of the Viralia system. What they saw took their breath away. The first planet they scanned was covered in smoke and fire. Its oceans had turned black, its cities shattered. The air itself seemed to cry. As the ship entered orbit, the crew detected hundreds of wrecked ships floating in space, twisted metal, silent and cold. These were not human ships. Their design was strange and elegant, like art turned into machinery, but all that beauty had been destroyed. "Send a signal," Hayes ordered. "Tell them we've come." For a long moment there was no reply, just static and silence. Then suddenly a faint voice broke through. "This is Villari Prime," it said weakly. We thought no one would come." The bridge went completely silent. The entire crew listened as the Villari described what had happened. The Draxan Dominion had attacked without warning, burning worlds and enslaving entire populations. They took what they wanted and left nothing behind. The Villari had fought bravely but were outmatched in power and numbers. Their last hope had been that someone, anyone, might hear their message. Hayes looked at her crew. Their faces were pale, eyes wide with disbelief. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Hayes said softly, "We're not leaving them." In that moment, humanity's mission changed. They were no longer explorers. They were witnesses to tragedy. The question that haunted them now was simple. Could they do something about it? The images from Valari Prime were shown to Earth. People wept when they saw the destroyed cities and dying children. Across human colonies, people began sending messages of support. Donations of food, medicine, and resources were prepared. But others warned that helping could start a war with the Draxan Dominion. "We are not ready to fight aliens," one general argued. "We might be saving one race only to destroy our own." Yet the world had already made up its mind. For the first time in centuries, humanity stood united in one feeling: empathy. Commander Hayes and her team landed on the surface of Valari Prime. The planet was quiet, covered in ash and dust. The air smelled of smoke and death. But in the ruins they found survivors, thin, weak, but alive. When the Valari saw humans for the first time, their golden eyes filled with tears. They knelt not in fear but in gratitude. One of them said, "We did not believe anyone would come. Thank you." Hayes helped them stand and replied, "You're not alone anymore." As the humans worked to help the survivors, Hayes realized something powerful. This wasn't just about saving another species. It was about proving that humanity could be better than its history. The Valari had reached out into the cold darkness begging for mercy, and it was humanity who had answered. But deep in her heart, Hayes also felt a shadow. The sight of the destroyed worlds filled her not only with sorrow but with anger. The Draxan Dominion had caused this suffering, and though she came for peace, she knew vengeance was beginning to stir in the hearts of her people. Humanity had arrived in the stars to bring hope, but soon they would bring something else. The days after humanity's arrival on Valari Prime were filled with silence and sorrow. The human crew walked through cities that once must have been beautiful. Towering buildings made of crystal and gold now lay in ruins. The ground was covered with ashes, and the air smelled like burned metal. Commander Alara Hayes had seen many wars in her lifetime, but nothing like this. Here even the wind seemed to whisper grief. The Valari, once proud and graceful, were now weak and broken. Their glowing eyes had lost their light. Many had no homes, no families, no future. The humans gave them food and medicine, but no one could heal the emptiness in their hearts. On Earth, people watched everything through live transmissions. They saw the burned cities, the dying children, and the faces of those who had lost everything. Millions cried while watching. Humanity began to realize that this was not just an alien tragedy, it was a reflection of their own history. People remembered the wars that had destroyed Earth long ago, the times when no one came to help. Now the universe had given them a chance to do something different, yet not everyone agreed. In the great halls of the United Earth Council, arguments broke out. Some leaders said that helping the Valari was dangerous. The Draxan Dominion sounded powerful and merciless. "If we interfere," one general warned, "we might start a war we cannot win." Others believed that turning away would destroy the meaning of humanity itself. "If we ignore this suffering," said Dr. Lena Korvich, a leading scientist, "then we have learned nothing from our past." The debate went on for days, and people across Earth protested in the streets. Some carried banners saying, "Save the Valari." Others shouted, "Protect Earth first." The world was divided between fear and compassion. Meanwhile, Commander Hayes continued her work on Valari Prime. She and her crew built temporary shelters for the survivors and helped bury the dead. Every night she sat beside the campfires listening to the stories of the Valari. One elder, named Saren, told her about the time before the war. Their world had been full of art, music, and light. The Valari believed in harmony with nature, in peace among the stars. Then one day the Draxan Dominion came without warning. They came like a storm, burning cities, enslaving people, and erasing everything in their path. They did not want land or wealth. They wanted power. They harvested the energy that lived within the Valari's bodies, a strange force called Lunaris Essence, which glowed within their skin. It was said to hold great power, and the Draxans wanted to use it to fuel their war machines. As Saren spoke, Hayes felt her anger growing. She clenched her fists, trying to stay calm, but she couldn't stop imagining what kind of creatures could do something so cruel. The next morning, she sent a full report to Earth. In it, she described what she had seen: the destroyed cities, the dying people, and the truth about the Draxons' crimes. Her message ended with one powerful sentence: "If we do nothing, then we are no better than the monsters who caused this." The report spread everywhere. People shared it across every colony, every ship, every city on Earth. Soldiers began volunteering to join the mission. Engineers started designing new ships ready to defend those who could not defend themselves. Slowly, the balance of the debate began to change. Humanity's compassion turned into determination. For the first time in a century, the divided nations of Earth began to unite under one goal: to protect the innocent. Yet not everyone was driven by hope. Some felt anger, deep and burning. They saw the images of the Valari's destruction and felt rage toward the Draxon Dominion. "If they can do this to others," one commander said during a council meeting, "then one day they will do it to us." Fear mixed with fury, and soon humanity began to prepare for something bigger than just aid. They started preparing for war. Back on Valari Prime, the humans tried to rebuild what little they could. The Valari were grateful, but there was sadness in their eyes. One young Valari named Lyrian became close to Commander Hayes. She was one of the few who could still smile. She told Hayes about the songs her people used to sing, and about the gardens that once glowed under twin moons. Hayes listened quietly, knowing those songs might never return. One night, while they looked up at the stars, Lyrian asked, "Why do you help us, Commander?" Hayes thought for a moment and said softly, "Because someone has to." But even as the two races grew closer, danger began to creep in. One evening, human sensors picked up strange signals from space. Unknown ships were moving near the outer edge of the Viralia system. They didn't respond to calls or warnings. Hayes feared it was the Draxon Dominion. She ordered her fleet to stay alert. The next day, they found wreckage floating near an abandoned moon. Valari ships recently destroyed. It was a warning. The Draxons knew humanity was there. Hayes called for a secure meeting with the Earth Council. "We can't wait any longer," she said. "They will come for us next. We must defend ourselves." But the council was divided again. Some wanted to pull back, afraid of a full-scale interstellar war. Others believed retreating now would destroy everything humanity stood for. Hayes waited for a decision, but none came. So she made her own. She ordered her fleet to remain in orbit around Valari Prime to protect the survivors. When the Draxons came, she would be ready. Her officers were nervous but loyal. "Ma'am," one of them said, "if they attack, we might not survive." Hayes looked out at the stars and replied, "Then we'll make sure they never forget who we are." That night she stood with Lyrian one last time. The Valari girl looked at her with worry. "They will come," she whispered. Hayes nodded. "Yes," she said quietly. "But this time they'll find that the galaxy isn't theirs to destroy." Back on Earth, people held their breath. Everyone knew the decision they made now would shape the future forever. The world that had once been divided by borders and wars now faced something greater than itself. It was no longer about humans or aliens. It was about choosing between fear and courage. The Draxon Dominion did not attack that day, but their presence was felt everywhere. Their ships appeared on the edges of human space, watching, waiting. The tension grew heavier with each passing hour. Humanity began to strengthen its fleets. Factories on Mars started producing new defense systems. Scientists developed powerful shields and energy weapons. Pilots trained day and night. Humanity was preparing for something it had never faced before. Through it all, Commander Hayes remained the symbol of hope. Her bravery inspired billions. Children painted her face on banners. Soldiers carried her name into training halls. She became the voice of what humanity could be when united. Not conquerors, not destroyers, but protectors. Yet inside, Hayes felt the weight of every choice. She knew that if war began, countless lives would be lost. She hoped for peace, but she was ready for the worst. As the days turned into weeks, the Valari slowly began to heal. Their songs returned, their lights shone again, and they started rebuilding their homes. They looked to the humans with trust and gratitude. But everyone knew that this fragile peace would not last. Somewhere in the darkness, the Draxon Dominion was watching. They had destroyed the Valari's worlds once, and now they had new targets, humans. Commander Hayes stood at the edge of her ship's observation deck. watching the sunrise over Valari Prime. The sky was filled with soft golden light, beautiful and calm. But beneath that beauty lay scars that could never heal. She whispered to herself, "If they come again, we won't run. We'll fight." And far away, in the cold reaches of space, Draxan warships began to move. Humanity had answered a call for help, but what they didn't know yet was that this call would change them forever. The line between mercy and vengeance was slowly fading, and soon the universe would witness what humanity truly was: kind when needed, fierce when provoked, and unstoppable when united. Commander Alara Hayes stood in the command center of her ship, the Solstice, staring at the holographic images before her. The screen showed terrible scenes. Valari colonies destroyed one after another, their shining cities turned to dust by the Draxan Dominion. Every report that came in told the same story. The Draxans were not just fighting for power, they were trying to erase an entire species. The Valari, once proud and graceful, were being hunted like animals. Each message received was more heartbreaking than the last. The cries of the survivors echoed in her ears even when the room was silent. Humanity had come to help, but now Hayes realized that help alone was not enough. It was time for action. She remembered the day she had landed on Valari Prime. She could still see the empty eyes of the children, their bodies thin from hunger, their homes gone. She had promised them safety, promised that humans would stand by them, but promises meant nothing if the Draxans continued their slaughter. Her heart burned with anger. Humanity had seen this before on their own world in their own history. Tyrants had destroyed nations and people had turned away. This time they wouldn't. This time humanity would not be the silent observer. They would be the storm that answered cruelty with justice. When the first captured Valari survivors told their full story, the truth shook everyone. The Draxan Dominion was using the Valari as living energy sources. The Valari possessed a glowing essence in their bodies called Lunaris, a natural energy that could power entire cities. The Draxans had discovered how to extract it by force, killing millions in the process. The surviving Valari described the pain, the screaming, and the endless fear. "They take the light from us," one said softly, "until nothing is left." When Hayes heard that, her fists tightened until her nails cut into her skin. Back on Earth, the United Earth Council met again, this time under a different atmosphere. The facts were undeniable now. The Draxans weren't just a threat to the Valari, they were a threat to all life. "If they can do this to them," said one scientist, "then they can do it to us next." The debate that had once been about whether to help or not now turned into a question of how far humanity was willing to go. The world that had once been divided was now beginning to unite, not out of hope, but out of anger. Commander Hayes returned to her ship, her eyes cold with determination. She called her officers together. The room was filled with tension. "We are not here as explorers anymore," she said firmly. "We are here as protectors. The Valari asked for help and we gave them promises. Now we must give them justice." No one spoke for a moment, then her second-in-command, Captain Rohan Malik, nodded slowly. "Then we prepare for war," he said. Hayes didn't smile, didn't celebrate. War was never something to celebrate, but deep down she knew it was the only way. Across human colonies, factories began working day and night. New warships were built, stronger and faster than anything before. Engineers designed weapons that could pierce even the Draxans' toughest armor. Scientists developed shields that could protect entire fleets. Soldiers volunteered in record numbers, ready to fight not for Earth, but for the galaxy's freedom. Humanity had been at peace for decades, but that peace had made them stronger, not weaker. Now they were united under one cause. The Valari watched this transformation with awe. They had expected sympathy, not vengeance. Many of them didn't even understand why humans were so angry on their behalf. One day, Lyrian, the young Valari girl, asked Hayes, "Why do your people fight for us? We are not your kind." Hayes looked at her quietly and said, "Because no one deserves to beg for mercy and be ignored. Not you, not anyone." Lyrian smiled faintly, but there was sadness in her eyes. "You will lose many of your own," she said softly. Hayes nodded. "I know. But if we don't stand now, one day someone else will suffer like you did. And then, it will be too late." When the first human fleet arrived in the Viralia system, the Draxans noticed immediately. Their scouts sent warnings back to their leaders. To them, humans were still a young, small race, a minor species barely out of their cradle. They didn't believe Earth could pose a threat. That arrogance would soon become their greatest mistake. One night, the Solstice received a distress signal from a nearby Valari colony. Hayes didn't hesitate. "Plot a course," she ordered. "We move now." Her ship jumped through hyperspace, followed by 3 others. When they arrived, they saw the horror again, a Draxan attack fleet destroying everything in sight. The Valari ships were weak and outnumbered. "We can't stand by," Captain Malik said. Hayes replied coldly, "We're not going to." She ordered her ships to engage. The first battle between humans and Draxans began among the burning skies of a dying world. The Draxans laughed at the sight of human ships approaching, thinking them small and fragile. But they didn't know what humanity had become. The human fleet opened fire with precision, their new plasma cannons cutting through Draxan armor like paper. For the first time, the Draxans retreated. It was a small victory, but it sent a loud message across the stars. Humanity had entered the war. The news of the battle spread quickly. Across the galaxy, enslaved species whispered the same words. "The humans have come." To the oppressed, it was a spark of hope. To the Draxans, it was the beginning of fear. Back on Valari Prime, Hayes walked among the survivors again. This time, their eyes had a faint light of hope. "You fought for us," one Valari elder said, tears glowing in his golden eyes. Hayes simply nodded. "We're not done yet," she said. But even as she spoke, she knew the cost that would come. Every battle meant human lives lost, ships destroyed, families broken. Yet she also knew that if they stopped now, everything they had fought for would mean nothing. Months passed, and the human fleet grew stronger. More and more worlds joined their cause. The Valari helped design weapons powered by their remaining Lunaris energy. Together, humans and Valari built something greater than either species had ever imagined. A true alliance. They trained together, fought together, and began to believe that victory was possible. But Hayes knew that vengeance could easily consume them. She saw it in her soldiers' eyes, their anger, their desire for revenge. At times, she feared they were becoming like the Draxans themselves. One night, while sitting in her quarters, she looked out at the stars and whispered, "Please don't let us lose who we are." Her fears came true when a Draxan prisoner was brought aboard. The soldiers wanted to execute him immediately. They said it would be justice for the millions he had killed. Hayes stopped them. "No," she said firmly. "We don't become monsters to destroy monsters." She questioned the prisoner instead, learning valuable information about the Dominion's bases and tactics. Her calmness shocked everyone, even the Valari. Lyrian later told her, "You fight with your mind, not just your heart. That's why you'll win." Eventually, with the new intelligence, humanity discovered the main Draxan stronghold, a planet-sized fortress hidden in the shadows of a dying star. It was there that they kept thousands of Valari slaves, draining them for their Lunaris energy. The sight made Hayes sick with rage. She called the council. "We end this now," she said. "No more waiting. No more running. Humanity will not watch another world burn." The council agreed. The operation was named Echo of Dawn. Every human ship, every weapon, every ally was prepared for the greatest battle in human history. Hayes addressed her crew before departure. "We fight not for revenge," she said, her voice echoing through the speakers, "but for justice. The Draxans think fear rules this galaxy. Today we prove them wrong." As her ship prepared for warp, Hayes looked at the stars one last time. She thought of Earth, of her home, of the promise she had made to the Valari. "They begged for help," she whispered. "Now we bring them the answer." The engines roared, the stars blurred, and the human fleet vanished into the dark. The war for vengeance had begun. Humanity, once a young and fragile race, was now something else, united, unstoppable, and burning with purpose. The galaxy would soon learn that when humanity fought, they didn't fight for conquest. They fought for those who had lost their light. And this time, they would bring that light back, even if it meant burning through the darkness itself. Months had passed since the great battle that ended the Draxan Dominion. The galaxy was quieter now, but the silence was strange, almost heavy. Commander Alara Hayes stood on the balcony of the new Galactic Council headquarters, watching the twin suns of Valari Prime rise over the horizon. The once destroyed planet was beginning to heal. Where ashes had covered the ground, small plants now pushed through the soil. Cities were being rebuilt, and for the first time in generations, the Valari walked freely on their homeworld without fear. Yet even in peace, shadows remained in every heart that had lived through the war. Hayes looked at the sunrise, feeling both peace and guilt. She remembered every face that had been lost, every ship that never returned. The war had changed her, it had changed all of humanity. People now looked at the stars differently. They no longer saw them as mysterious lights to explore. They saw them as places of pain and memory, as silent witnesses to what humans had done when pushed to their limits. The Valari saw the humans as saviors, but Hayes often wondered if they truly deserved that title. That morning, she was called into the council chamber. The great hall was filled with representatives from dozens of species. The surviving Valari elders sat beside human leaders, and in the center of the chamber stood a large silver table shaped like a star. Hayes walked in quietly, her boots echoing against the polished floor. The room fell silent as she entered. Everyone knew who she was, the woman who had led humanity's vengeance, the woman who had destroyed the Draxans. Elder Saren, one of the oldest surviving Valari, rose slowly to speak. His glowing eyes reflected kindness and sorrow. "Commander Hayes," he said softly, "because of you, my people live. You gave us back our world. We can never thank you enough." Hayes lowered her head respectfully. "You don't need to thank me," she said. "I only did what anyone should do when faced with cruelty." Saren smiled sadly. "Not everyone would have chosen to help us. Some would have turned away. Humanity did not." As the meeting continued, the council discussed rebuilding destroyed worlds, establishing new laws and forming alliances to ensure that no empire like the Draxans would rise again. But Hayes could sense the unease behind their words. The galaxy was free, yes, but it was also fragile. Old wounds take time to heal, and not every species agreed on how to move forward. Some feared humanity's strength. They whispered that the same fire that destroyed the Draxans could one day burn others too. After the meeting, Hayes left the hall quietly. Outside in the garden courtyard, she found Lyrian waiting for her, the young Valari girl who had survived the war and now served as a peace ambassador. She smiled warmly at Hayes. "You still carry the war in your eyes," Lyrian said gently. Hayes gave a small smile. "It's not easy to let go," she replied. "Every night I close my eyes and see the battles again. The fire, the screams, the faces of those we couldn't save." Lyrian nodded. "Pain takes time to fade, but the stars are healing and so will you." They walked together along a small path surrounded by glowing blue flowers, a symbol of Valari renewal. The air was warm, filled with the gentle hum of life returning. Hayes asked softly, "Do your people forgive us for the destruction we caused?" Lyrian looked at her, surprised. "Forgive you? Commander, you freed us." "Yes," Hayes said, "but we also destroyed half of your skies doing it." Lyrian stopped walking. "You destroyed to protect. That is not something to regret. You did what had to be done." Hayes wanted to believe that, but deep down she still questioned it. Humanity had shown great courage, but also great fury. They had not just saved the Valari. They had annihilated their enemy with ruthless precision. She wondered if vengeance had cost them something invisible, something within their soul. Later that night, Hayes sat alone aboard the Solstice, now docked above Valari Prime. The ship was scarred from battle, its hull still bearing the marks of plasma fire. She walked through the empty halls, touching the walls as if feeling the ghosts of her crew. In the mess hall, she found a small metal plaque listing the names of the fallen. She ran her fingers across it slowly, whispering each name under her breath. "You gave everything," she murmured, "and the galaxy will never know your names like it should." The intercom crackled softly. "Commander Hayes," came Malik's voice. He was still alive, now serving as Admiral of the Earth Defense Fleet. "The Council wants you to stay for the peace ceremony tomorrow. They're honoring you." Hayes sighed. "I don't need honors," she said. "Let them honor the dead. That's who deserves it." Malik's voice softened. "You carry the burden for all of us, Alara. But sometimes you need to let go. We did what we had to. We saved lives." Hayes closed her eyes. "Maybe. But we also ended so many." The next day, the great peace ceremony took place in the rebuilt capital of Valari Prime. Millions of people gathered, both human and alien. Giant banners fluttered in the wind, showing symbols of unity. A star surrounded by open hands. As the ceremony began, Elder Saren gave a powerful speech. "For centuries we suffered under darkness," he said. "We called for help and the humans answered. They did not come as conquerors but as protectors. Today we celebrate not victory but unity. The galaxy stands free, not because of one race, but because many stood together. When Hayes's turn came to speak, the crowd grew silent. She stepped up to the podium, her uniform simple, her voice calm. "I am not here as a hero," she said. "I am here as a witness. I saw what hate can do, what vengeance can create. We fought not for power, but for peace. But peace must be more than the absence of war. It must be built on understanding, on compassion, on remembering what we lost so that we never repeat it." Her words touched the crowd deeply. Many wept. Even the stars above seemed to shine brighter that day. As she stepped down, Lyrian hugged her tightly. "You gave us hope," she whispered. Hayes smiled faintly. "Then promise me one thing," she said. "Promise me you'll make sure the next generation never needs vengeance to find peace." That night, the celebration filled the sky with lights. Ships released trails of silver and gold energy that painted the darkness like fireworks. Children laughed, songs filled the air, and for the first time in decades, the galaxy felt alive again. Hayes watched it all from a small hill overlooking the city. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe freely. The pain was still there, but it was softer now, like an old scar that no longer bled. As she looked up, she saw something shining among the stars, a faint golden glow drifting slowly across the sky. It was the same light she had seen during the final battle, the light of the freed Villari souls. She smiled gently. "You're still watching," she whispered. "Thank you." She turned to Malik, who stood beside her, also watching the sky. "What do we do now?" he asked quietly. Hayes looked out at the horizon, where the sun was beginning to rise again. "Now," she said, "we build, we heal. We teach the galaxy that even the smallest act of kindness can be stronger than vengeance." Malik nodded. "And if another threat comes?" She looked at him and smiled faintly. "Then we'll be ready. But this time we'll fight not with anger, but with purpose." The wind carried her words into the night. The stars above shimmered like silent witnesses, as if promising that her vow would be remembered. Humanity had come to the stars with vengeance, but they would remain to build peace. The story of their wrath would echo through generations, but so would their compassion. Years later, children across the galaxy would learn about Commander Alara Hayes and the day humanity brought vengeance to save the innocent. But they would also learn about what came after. The healing, the unity, and the courage to build something better. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of known space, the light of the Villari still drifted, reminding every living being that even in the darkest night, there is always a spark waiting to rise again. And so, the galaxy moved forward, not with fear, but with hope. Because when aliens begged for help, humanity answered not only with vengeance, but with a heart that refused to forget why they fought in the first place, to protect, to heal, and to ensure that light would never fade again.